So CD Projekt Red had just announced The Witcher 4 at the Game Awards with a brand new trailer showcasing what to expect. And normally this would have been met with universal praise because The Witcher 3 was so beloved by everyone. But unfortunately, not everyone was too happy about the reveal trailer because it showed that the protagonist was going to be none other than Ciri as a full-blown Witcher. And some people on certain corners of the internet were pretty upset with this, to say the least. So what is this whole controversy about, and why are people so unhappy with what was shown in the trailer? There are a couple of issues raised by these individuals. The first is that some people were hoping to play as a completely different character in The Witcher 4, either as a brand new predetermined character from a completely different Witcher school, or as a custom character that the player can make themselves. To be honest, I think that this is one of the weaker arguments because if you've played The Witcher 3 to the end and have gotten the good ending, then you would have seen that the game pretty much sets up the sequel to be about Ciri. And it was pretty obvious too, because at the end of the game, after they've beaten the main antagonist, she takes up the Witcher mantle and Geralt gives Ciri her very own silver sword to slay monsters with. This combined with the fact that the devs have explicitly stated that The Witcher 3 was going to be the end of Geralt's story and that he will no longer be the protagonist in future installments. I mean, the writing was on the wall with this one. Ciri was already an established character with tons of potential stories to tell, and the ending of The Witcher 3 was symbolic of Geralt passing the torch on to his protege. Ciri being the protagonist of Witcher 4 was just the natural conclusion to the story that CDPR had been setting up for over a decade. But I do understand the sentiment of wanting to play as an entirely fresh new character that has no ties to Geralt and wanting a completely different perspective in the Witcher universe. The second issue is that people are claiming that CD Projekt Red uglified Ciri in the trailer because she looks nothing like she does in the games. Now I can see where people are coming from because she's not as conventionally attractive as she was in The Witcher 3, but to be honest, she doesn't really look that ugly either. I think she looks fine. Like, she's not any sort of Victoria's Secret model, but she's not some sort of hideous cave troll either. She just looks like an average woman in her mid to late 30s. I don't see where they uglified her here. However, my problem with the trailer is that this didn't look like Ciri at all. Like, she has a completely different facial bone structure than what she did in The Witcher 3, and her voice is also completely different as well. I mean, if you remove the Witcher name from the trailer and told me that this was Helga from some medieval European fantasy game, then I would have believed you. Watching this trailer, I was like, that's not Ciri, that's just someone cosplaying as Ciri. But to be fair, Geralt also looked different in both CGI trailers for The Witcher 3 as well. Let's not even mention how he looked in The Witcher 1 and 2 because yikes, those were not his best years. The in-game character models have always differed from the trailer models because different studios were in charge of making them, so I'm not really going to judge the whole game based off of this one trailer alone. I'm going to have to see what the final design is going to be when the game actually comes out in 3 to 5 years. The third argument, and probably the most compelling one, is that this trailer completely breaks the Witcher lore that was previously established by the books. If you didn't know, in the Witcher books written by Andrzej Sapkowski, it was stated that in order to become an actual Witcher, you need to go through an extremely dangerous mutation process called the Trial of the Grasses, in which the subjects are administered a whole host of toxic herbs and plants in order to transform them into monster-killing superhumans. And this trial is so lethal that very few individuals ever even survive the process. So in order to ensure the highest possible chance of success, they usually select young boys to go through this trial because their bodies have the highest chance of enduring the mutagens. Even then, they only have about a 30% chance of survival, so the odds still aren't very good, and most of the subjects still end up dying anyway. That's not to say they haven't tried it on girls. They've attempted the trial of grasses multiple times on female subjects, it just doesn't seem like any of them have ever survived. So Ciri going through these trials and succeeding goes against all of the previously established lore because 1, she's female so her body shouldn't be able to handle the mutagenic process, and 2, she's an adult, which also means that her body shouldn't be able to handle the mutagens, which is why young boys are usually selected to go through these trials. Ciri becoming a Witcher would imply that all of these previously established rules were broken, and for a story-based game to retcon its own lore is pretty telling of how the writers would treat the narrative of its own universe. However, The Witcher is sort of a special case though, because it's an IP that's spread across multiple different entertainment mediums, each of them having their own different interpretations of the Witcher universe, with the books obviously being the original canon lore. The games and TV series are just adaptations that loosely follow the lore of the books. And loosely is the key word here, because the thing is that the author absolutely despises the games and shows and does not consider them anywhere near canon to the books. They're essentially all fanfiction in his eyes, meaning that the games have always had their own self-contained canon that was just based off of the Witcher books. The games, shows, books, tabletop, they all take place within the same Witcher universe, but they all contain their own canon lore that's only unique to that specific medium. And the games are just the Witcher books loosely adapted and interpreted by CD Projekt Red, not Sapkowski. That being said though, the main reason why the games were so good in the first place was because they respected the source material and they stayed true to how the characters would act and how the rules of the world operated. If CDPR completely disregarded the source material, then they probably would have never gotten the same level of praise as they got today. Just take a look at what happened with the Witcher TV show. At first it was praised because it stayed true to how the characters would act in the source material, and the people that worked on it cared about adhering to the lore. But then eventually they stopped caring and deviated into its own dumpster fire of a mess that it is today, which quickly prompted fan backlash, and now it's sitting at a 19% audience rating on Rotten Tomatoes. The TV show writers obviously thought that they could write a better version of The Witcher that completely deviates from the source material, and now nobody wants to watch their show because of how horribly it bastardized the lore. So Ciri becoming a Witcher points to the same direction that the TV show is heading, which is not good, and is the reason why so many fans are concerned about how CDPR is going to handle the story. And if they're truly set on having Ciri go through the Witcher process, then they better have a damn good reason for breaking established lore. So, what do I think about all of this? Well, if I'm being honest, I think this whole outrage is just way too much for me. I think people are jumping the gun way too soon from what very little information we have given to us. Look, I don't like gaming studios destroying our beloved IPs just as much as the next guy, but the game's not even out yet and it won't be for a long while, and based on this one trailer alone that isn't really that bad in reality, I'm going to withhold my judgments for now. So forgive me for not raising my pitchfork and joining the culture war on this one, but I think it's way too early to make a definitive conclusion about this game. However, I do understand why some people might feel like The Witcher 4 is heading in the wrong direction based on everything we've seen so far. For example, the launch day of Cyberpunk 2077 had a lot of people pretty upset with how CD Projekt Red mishandled the development cycle of one of the most hyped games to ever be released. Because before that, their latest big budget game was The Witcher 3, and it was regarded as a masterpiece by everyone, so at the time they were the industry darling. That was until the disastrous launch of Cyberpunk 2077 that kinda blackpilled everyone and made them realize that CD Projekt Red is just another gaming studio just like the rest of them. It also didn't help that CDPR had openly admitted to using consultancy companies such as Sweet Baby Inc. and are fully on board with DEI policies. That was when the trust was completely broken and people are no longer fully supportive of this company anymore. And I know these are just 2 points, but 2 points on a graph make a line, and I don't blame people for using their pattern recognition to see the trend with CD Projekt Red. But in my opinion, I think they still have the capacity to make great games despite some recent blunders, and I'll still be eagerly waiting for The Witcher 4. But I'm no longer under the illusion that this company is perfect like I was 10 years ago after I finished The Witcher 3. And if the game is bad, then I'll be the first one to say it. But until then, I'll let CD Projekt Red cook and reserve my judgment for the official release of The Witcher 4.